Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk through a city where the only sound is the rustling of the wind? Today, you'll learn about places where time has frozen, and the streets have long forgotten what human footsteps sound like. Ghost towns that seem to be frozen in anticipation, hiding forgotten stories and dark secrets of the past. These aren't just abandoned buildings. These are the pages of history that we'll turn together today. Let's take a look at the most amazing and strange cities. Where did people flee from? And why does their story still excite people's minds? Get ready for discoveries that will change your understanding of the past forever. Pripyat is one of the most well-known and simultaneously eerie ghost towns in the world. Its fate is closely tied to the largest nuclear disaster in history, the Chernobyl accident that happened in 1986. The city was founded in the 1970s and was envisioned as a modern and rapidly developing settlement. It is closely linked to the nearby Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Pripyat was originally designed as an innovative city that utilized cutting-edge architectural solutions, such as the triangular layout of the buildings, which allowed for efficient distribution of living space and created a sense of openness. The city's population was around 50,000 people. The infrastructure included kindergartens, schools, movie theaters, and shopping centers. The authorities had plans to open a new amusement park with rides, including a Ferris wheel, on May 1, 1986. These plans never came to fruition. The night before the park was set to open, a major accident occurred at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, leading to an explosion of the fourth reactor and the destruction of the nuclear reactor. The residents of Pripyat were urgently evacuated. They were promised a quick return, but they were only allowed to take the bare minimum with them. And the pets. They stayed in the city. The area around the accident was soon declared an exclusion zone, making it impossible to return to Pripyat. Since the 1990s, Pripyat has been hosting tours that attract those looking for a glimpse into the past. The subsequent reactor at the plant was only shut down in 2000. The interest in Pripyat is not only due to the Chernobyl disaster, but also because of the unique atmosphere of the city, where time seems to have frozen at 3:50. Residents left the city in a hurry, leaving it in a state of eternal waiting for their return. And now Pripyat remains a reminder of the tragic event that changed the course of history. In 1986, residents left the city in a hurry, leaving it in a state of eternal waiting for their return. And now Pripyat remains a reminder of the tragic event that changed the course of history. The mining settlement of Pyramid is located on the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, but it officially belongs to Russia. The historical roots of this territory go back to a distant past. Since the 17th century, there has been a struggle for control over Svalbard among various European powers that sought to control the rich resources of the archipelago, including whaling and fur trapping. In 1872, Svalbard was declared a neutral territory, and in 1920, Norway established sovereign authority over the islands, but with the stipulation that the countries participating in the agreement, a total of 12 countries, had the right to own separate parts of the island and engage in economic activities. Coal mining in Svalbard began in the 20th century. Russia acquired several coal mines, including the Pyramid mines, named after the nearby mountain at the foot of which they are located. About 1,000 people lived in the settlement of Pyramid, and coal was mined from 1927 to 1998. After the mine closed, Pyramid became a ghost town, preserving the atmosphere of the Soviet era. In the settlement, various buildings have been preserved, such as multi-story panel buildings, dormitories, a gym, a cultural center, industrial buildings, and a port. Traces of the Soviet era can still be seen in houses, newspapers, calendars, toys, books, and other items left behind by the residents. Despite its remoteness from civilization and harsh climate, Pyramid attracts tourists from all over the world, those looking to experience the romance of the northern latitudes. The settlement is also visited by employees from the active mine in Barentsburg, which is located 74.5 miles from Pyramid. Two ghost towns, located near the capital of Abkhazia, Sukhumi, in the Tverchely district, emerged due to coal mining. Active development of the deposit and the construction of worker settlements began in the 1930s. The first of these towns, Tverchely, became the industrial center of Abkhazia. It had a processing plant, a building materials factory, and a reinforced concrete products factory. Workers and their families lived there. There was a railway and a sanatorium with mineral waters. In 1938, the settlement of Akamara was built for the mine workers. During the war years, it developed rapidly. It was built by German prisoners of war, which gave it some unusual features for a worker settlement. In Akamara, elegant houses in the classical style appeared, along with wide streets and fountains, as well as unique engineering solutions for the buildings, like arch bridges. Unlike a typical industrial settlement, Akamara gained a reputation as a prestigious place to live. There were schools in the settlement. Hospitals, cultural institutions, and movie theaters created comfortable living conditions. In 1942, both settlements were merged into a single urban entity. Until the early 1990s, the population of the Tvarcheli district reached 20,000 people. However, in 1992, with the onset of the conflict between Georgia and Abkhazia, the towns of Tvarcheli and Akamara were abandoned, residents evacuated, and the mines ceased to operate. Now, about 30 people live in the abandoned houses of Akamara. Residents were evacuated and the mines ceased functioning. Currently, about 30 people live in the abandoned houses of Akamari, who refuse to leave their homes. In the past, the Pripyat city of Famagusta was a popular vacation spot. The elite neighborhood of Varosha was especially attractive, enjoying great popularity among wealthy people from all over the world. Among the celebrities who visited were Brigitte Bardot and Elizabeth Taylor. Rooms in expensive hotels were booked years in advance. Varosha, New Famagusta, was a brief luxury. It was a city within a city, with upscale apartments, expensive villas, modern infrastructure, bars, and nightclubs. However, this paradise didn't last long. In 1974, Turkish troops invaded Cyprus, dividing the island into northern and southern territories. Famagusta, including Varosha, came under the control of the Turkish Republic. Because of the occupation, the residents of Cyprus were forced to leave their homes. Since then, Varosha has become a UN buffer zone. Only the former residents can move back into the city. But due to the ongoing occupation, that's not possible for now. Today, the resort looks like an apocalyptic scene. On the streets, there are rusted cars, luxurious buildings overgrown with plants, and the area is surrounded by barbed wire. Even though the area is closed off and guarded, you can still get in. Recently, they started allowing tourists into this abandoned resort. Travelers can stroll along the beaches, where world stars once vacationed, but only at certain times and in designated areas. Houses are falling apart and turning into slums, where wild animals now roam, so it's dangerous to go inside. People leave cities not just because of wars or changes in political regimes, but also because of natural disasters, like the destruction of the ancient city of Croc in Italy. Croc was founded by Greek settlers around the 6th century BC. And for centuries, it remained prosperous and influential. In the city, they built a fortress, several palaces, and even a university. Croc withstood many attacks and wars, but nature proved to be stronger than man. The initial hardships for the residents began in 1696, when a plague epidemic broke out in the city, and then the conditions for agriculture started to worsen. Over time, the population began to decline, and by the end of the 19th century, Croc started to fall into decay. The final destruction of the city happened in 1963, when a powerful landslide destroyed it. The earthquake in 1980 made it impossible to restore the city. Today, Croc attracts tourists and filmmakers. The ruins of the city are used for filming Hollywood movies, like Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ and Mark Forster's Quantum of Solace. Croc has also become a popular spot for local filmmaking. The city of Vardia is a unique architectural marvel, carved into a sheer rock face by the Kara River. The city consists of about 600 rooms, originally having around 6,000 spaces, spread across 13 levels, with some of them going down 33 feet. Inside, the rock. The spaces are connected by a complex system of narrow corridors, staircases, and hidden passages. The construction of Vardia began in the 12th century at the initiative of the father of the famous Queen Tamar, George III. For decades, the city expanded, and its area increased, allowing it to accommodate up to 50,000 people. However, its hard-to-reach location didn't save the city from destruction. It was repeatedly attacked by enemies, and in the 16th century, it was captured by Turkish forces, after which it was abandoned. 2 centuries after its capture, Vardia was reclaimed by Russian troops, and it housed an Orthodox monastery. During Soviet times, Vardia was used as a museum, but now most of the complex has been transferred to the Orthodox Church, and the rest is open to tourists. Vardia is famous for its medieval frescoes, and people come here to enjoy the view from above, try the water from an underground spring that is considered healing, and even make wishes. The ghost town of Bodie in California is a vivid example of the gold rush in America. Gold deposits in the Sierra Nevada mountains were discovered in 1859 by prospectors, including the famous explorer William Bodie. However, his search didn't yield the expected results. Bodie wasn't able to get rich from his discovery, and soon after, he died in a snowstorm while trying to reach the nearest settlement for supplies. However, decades after his death, large deposits of gold were discovered in these areas, which led to the creation of the town and its naming. Named after Bodie. By 1880, the town had a population of about 10,000 people. A diverse infrastructure developed there. They built dozens of residential houses, churches, a railroad, and taverns and hotels opened up. The town had 65 saloons, and local newspapers were published. Bodie became known as the typical Wild West town, where murders, brawls, and robberies were common. Nevertheless, life in Bodie was short-lived. The drop in gold prices and the decrease in mining volumes led to a decline in interest in these places. By 1960, the gold mines in Bodie were closed, and the town itself became deserted. Today, Bodie operates as a historic park, where the appearance of past times has been preserved. Here, historical buildings and everyday items have been preserved, and the atmosphere resembles that of a distant past. The small town of Orter became a symbol of tragedy. That occurred during World War II. On June 10, 1944, just a few days after the Allies landed in France, a German SS division captured and destroyed this town. On that day, 642 people lost their lives. After the war, the French didn't rebuild the destroyed town. Instead, they created a new settlement with the same name. In 1946, the remnants of old Orter were recognized as a historical monument. Today, you can see burned houses and damaged vehicles here. Nearby, there's a memorial dedicated to the victims of the tragedy, called the Village of Martyrs. Access to the memorial is through the Orter Memorial Center, located near the new town. The permanent exhibition includes 5 halls, showcasing documents, eyewitness accounts, and memories of the events from that time. Colemanskop is an abandoned ghost town that was once a bustling and important hub in the region. Now, it's almost completely buried in the sands of the Namib Desert. The early 20th century marked the so-called Diamond Rush in Namibia, and now they are almost completely buried in the sands of the Namib Desert. The beginning of the 20th century marked the so-called Diamond Rush in Namibia. According to legend, one of the employees at the local train station accidentally discovered some small shiny stones in the sand, which turned out to be diamonds. He brought them to his boss, and he immediately recognized the value of the find. A short period of time, a city emerged in the desert, attracting miners. It had a school, hospital, stadium, and casino. Miners came here seeking diamond profits. They built a school, a rare X-ray hospital, a stadium. Colemanskop was key to regional development. In the town, they built a school, a hospital with an X-ray machine, which was quite a rarity at the time, a stadium, and even a casino. Colemanskop became one of the most important points of development in the region. However, the prosperity did not last long. In the 1930s, the diamond supplies began to run out, and the residents left their homes in search of new sources of income. Decades later, the remaining town has become a museum, with only a few restored buildings remaining. These days, Colemanskop is an abandoned site, covered in sand, where fragments of its former glory remain. There's a school, a hospital, a bakery, and the buildings of the former ice factory. Hashima is one of the most unusual and amazing ghost towns in the world. A school, a hospital, a bakery, and the buildings of the former ice factory. Hashima is one of the most unusual and amazing ghost towns in the world. Located on a small island in the South China Sea, it started its life as an important economic center. In 1887, the year was 1887, in the year when the Japanese corporation, Mitsubishi, began coal mining on the rocky coastal area. By 1959, Hashima had become the largest settlement in the country, gathering over 100,000 residents in its small space. The city had hospitals, schools, shops, temples, and a cemetery. However, 15 years after its peak, coal mining in Hashima came to an end, and residents began to leave the city in droves. The reason for leaving was also the constant strong waves and seawater, which regularly flooded the streets and threatened the lives of the townspeople. Many left Hashima, leaving behind their homes and belongings. Over time, the city turned into a ghost town, subject to decay and erosion. In 2009, the city was open to tourists and it became a popular attraction. In 2011, scenes from the movie Skyfall were filmed here. That same year, Hashima was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, tourists can only visit a small part of the city, as a significant portion of the buildings are in a state of disrepair. Abandoned ghost towns have a unique atmosphere. It combines elements of mystery, history, and even magic. In the old houses, furniture, street signs, and leftover items, you can find plenty of interesting details that tell stories about the past. Each of them holds its own story, creating a unique atmosphere of the place, rich with emotions and fantasies. What I want to offer you, friends, is no less exciting. You have a unique opportunity to become part of our team. If you have video editing skills, you can voice over videos in Russian, English, and other languages, or write interesting scripts. We would be happy to work with you. Message our Telegram bot. The link is in the description. And that's all for today. Bye-bye, everyone.